The grand observatory floated in the darkness between stars. It was a massive station, built by species long dead, and now it served as the eyes of the Galactic Council. From here, 47 different alien races watched the universe. They watched young civilizations grow. They watched old ones die. And today, they watched humanity. Counselor Vethran stood at the center of the observation chamber. He was old, even by Solari standards. His gray skin had grown pale over the centuries, and his four eyes moved slowly as he studied the holographic displays around him. The Solari were known for their patience and their wisdom. They had watched 10,000 species rise and fall. Humanity, to them, was just another entry in a very long list. Species 7291, Vethran announced to the assembled council. Local designation: human. Origin world: Earth. Third planet from a yellow dwarf star in the outer spiral arm. Around him, representatives from dozens of species listened with varying degrees of interest. Most were bored. The Veleth ambassador Yanara floated gently in her gravity bubble, her transparent body pulsing with soft light. The Kethvari representative, Methdok, scratched at his scales impatiently. His people were warriors, conquerors. They had little interest in soft creatures from small planets. They have no natural weapons, Vethran continued. No claws. No venom. No armored skin. Their bones break easily. Their bodies cannot survive temperature extremes. They require constant hydration. By all standard measurements, they are among the most fragile intelligent species we have catalogued. Methdok let out a low hiss that served as laughter among his kind. Then why do we waste time discussing them? They are prey, not partners. Several other counselors made sounds of agreement. Yanara, however, remained silent. She had been studying humanity for longer than most. Something about them made her uncomfortable, though she could not say exactly what. We discussed them, Vethran said calmly, because they have developed faster than light travel. They have established colonies on 12 worlds. They meet the basic requirements for first contact consideration. The discussion was about to continue when an alarm cut through the chamber. Every display in the room suddenly changed, showing the same image, a planet burning. What is this? Demanded Counselor Thresh of the Mundari Collective. A young Solari technician answered, her voice shaking. Proxima Tertius, a human colony world. The Kethvari Dominion has launched an invasion. All eyes turned to Methdok. The Kethvari representative showed no shame. His people took what they wanted. This was their way, and the council had never stopped them before. The Dominion expands, Methdok said simply. This is known. These humans are weak. They will fall quickly. There is no need for council intervention. Vethran raised one thin hand. We will observe. That is our purpose. The display shifted again, showing real-time feeds from the planet's surface. The Kethvari had landed in force. Their soldiers were massive reptilian creatures, each standing 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor and armed with weapons that could cut through steel. They moved through the human settlement with terrible efficiency, destroying everything in their path. The humans ran. Of course they ran. What else could they do? Yanara watched closely. Her species, the Veleth, were empaths. They could sense emotions across vast distances, and right now she was feeling the terror of thousands of human minds. Mothers grabbing children. Fathers trying to fight with farming tools. Old people falling in the streets. It was horrible, and it was familiar. She had felt this same fear from 100 conquered species. But then something changed. Counselor Vethran, Yanara said softly. Look at the biometric feeds. The old Solari adjusted the display, bringing up medical data from the surviving humans. Heart rates, brain activity, hormone levels. What he saw made him pause. "This cannot be correct," he said. The data showed that in the first hour of the attack, human fear responses had spiked exactly as expected. Adrenaline flooded their systems. Cortisol levels went through the roof. Their bodies prepared for death. But now, 3 hours into the invasion, something strange was happening. The fear was not increasing. It was decreasing. Heart rates were slowing. Breathing became steady. The chemical signature of panic was being replaced by something else entirely. "What am I looking at?" Methdoc demanded, stepping closer to the display. Yanara's transparent form flickered with confusion. Their fear is transforming. They are not becoming calm. They are becoming focused. On the surface, the feeds showed humans who were no longer running blindly. They were gathering in small groups. They were watching the Kethvari patrols with strange intensity. Their eyes tracked the alien soldiers with a patience that seemed wrong for. Creatures about to die. One feed showed a human female crouching in the ruins of a building. A Kethvari soldier passed within meters of her hiding spot. The biometric data showed her heart rate drop even further as the danger approached. Her pupils dilated wide. Every muscle in her body went still. She was not freezing in terror. She was waiting. The Kethvari passed without seeing her. The moment it was gone, she moved, silent as a shadow, joining 3 other survivors who had been watching from different positions. They exchanged no words. They simply looked at each other, nodded, and began following the patrol. "They are tracking the soldiers," Bethran observed. "Why would prey follow their predators?" Yanara felt something cold move through her consciousness. She had touched billions of minds over her long life. She knew fear. She knew despair. She knew surrender. But this feeling coming from the humans was none of those things. It was old. Very old. It came from a place deep inside the human brain. A place that remembered when their ancestors had no claws, no fangs, no armor. A place that remembered how those soft, weak creatures had survived anyway. The humans were not thinking about escape anymore. They were not thinking about rescue. They were thinking about the Kethvari soldiers who had killed their families, burned their homes, and thought themselves safe. "They are not panicking," Yanara whispered, her voice carrying through the silent chamber. "They are focusing." On the display, more groups of humans were forming. They moved through the shadows, staying just out of sight, never attacking, just watching, learning, following. Meth, single quotes, DOK, watched with growing unease. His soldiers on the surface were reporting easy victories. They had killed hundreds of humans already. By every measure, the invasion was a complete success. So why did he feel, for the first time in his life, like he had made a terrible mistake? "What are they doing?" he asked, and for once, his voice held no mockery. Veteran studied the data with all 4 of his ancient eyes. He had seen 10,000 species face extinction. He had never seen one react like this. "I do not know," the old Solari admitted, "but I suggest we keep watching." 72 hours had passed since the invasion began. The Kethvari soldiers were confident. They had killed thousands of humans and taken control of every major settlement on Proxima Tertius. The remaining survivors were scattered in the forests and mountains, running like the prey they were. Victory was certain. Commander Kresh led his patrol through the alien forest. There were 20 soldiers under his command, each one a perfect killing machine. Their scales could stop bullets. Their claws could tear through metal. Their eyes could see in total darkness. They had been bred for war across 1,000 generations. 3 human farmers had attacked them yesterday. Kresh's soldiers had killed them in seconds. The humans had fought with mining tools and kitchen knives. It was almost sad. "We rest here," Kresh ordered, pointing to a small clearing. His soldiers had been moving for 16 hours. And even HFY warriors needed sleep. But as they began to settle, one of his scouts returned with troubling news. "Commander, we are being followed." Kresh's eyes narrowed. "By how many?" "I have counted 8. They stay at a distance. When we stop, they stop. When we move, they follow. Then we kill them." The patrol reversed course, moving quickly toward where the humans had been spotted. But when they arrived, the area was empty. The humans had moved again. "Find them," Kresh growled. They searched for 3 hours. Every time they thought they had located the humans, the prey slipped away. The HFY were faster, stronger, and better armed. But the humans knew this forest now. They used every shadow, every hill, every stream to stay just out of reach. Finally, exhausted and frustrated, Kresh ordered his patrol back to their original path. They would report the survivors to the main force. Let someone else hunt them down. But the humans followed Dot in the Galactic Council chamber. Veteran watched the situation develop with growing fascination. He had pulled up extensive records on human biology, and what he found was deeply troubling. "They are persistence predators," he explained to the assembled counselors. "Their ancestors on Earth hunted not with speed or strength, but with endurance. They would follow prey for hours, sometimes days, never attacking, just following. The prey would run, exhaust itself, run again, exhaust itself again. Eventually, the prey could run no more. Then the humans would close in." "Impossible," Methdok said. "No species hunts like that. Humans do. Their bodies are designed for it. They can regulate their temperature through sweating, allowing them to move continuously in conditions that would overheat other species. Their bipedal movement is extremely efficient over long distances. They require less food and water than expected for their size. And most importantly," Vethron paused, letting his words sink in, "they do not give up." On the display, Commander Kresh's patrol had been moving for 36 hours straight. They had tried to rest twice, but each time, scouts reported the humans getting closer. The HFY could not sleep knowing prey was watching them, and the humans took turns. While some rested, others watched. They were never all asleep, never all tired. They worked as a pack, sharing the burden of the hunt. Kresh's soldiers were beginning to break. HFY were ambush predators. Their bodies were designed for explosive violence, not extended pursuit. Their muscles burned with built-up acid. Their minds screamed for rest. They stumbled over routes they would normally have seen clearly. They jumped at shadows that were not there. "How long can humans maintain pursuit?" Yanara asked quietly. Veteran checked the data. The record on their homeworld is 350 kilometers over 6 days. A human hunter following an antelope until the animal's heart gave out. The chamber was silent. On the surface, Kresh made a decision. His soldiers could not continue like this. They would turn and fight, using their superior weapons to destroy these annoying creatures once and for all. He ordered an ambush. His soldiers took positions in a rocky canyon, covering every approach with heavy weapons. The humans would have to come through here to continue following. When they did, they would die. The patrol waited. Hours passed. The humans did not come. Instead, when Kresh finally sent scouts to investigate, they found that the humans had circled around the canyon entirely. They had predicted the ambush. They had used the time the HFY spent waiting to rest, eat, and prepare, and now they were ahead of the patrol, blocking the path back to base. "Commander," one of his soldiers said, voice trembling with exhaustion, "what do we do?" Kresh had no answer. His training had not prepared him for this. Enemies were supposed to run or fight. These humans did neither. They simply followed, waited, learned. In the council chamber, Methdok watched his soldiers begin to panic. For the first time in living memory, HFY warriors were afraid. not of battle, not of death, but of something they could not understand. They are not soldiers, he said slowly, watching the humans move through the forest with patient grace. They are hunters, and they have marked my people as prey. The end came at dawn. Kresh's patrol had been awake for 52 hours. They could barely stand. Their weapons shook in their claws. When the humans finally attacked, emerging from the shadows with crude weapons and terrible determination, the HFY could not fight back effectively. The battle lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, 8 human farmers stood among the bodies of 20 HFY warriors. They were wounded. They were exhausted. But they were alive. One of them, an older male with gray in his hair, bent down and took a communication device from Commander Kresh's body. He activated it, broadcasting on the HFY military frequency. "This is Proxima Tertius," he said, his voice calm and steady. "We know you can hear this. We want you to understand something. You came to our world. You killed our families. You burned our homes. You thought we would break." He paused, looking down at the dead soldiers around him. "We do not break. We do not stop. We do not give up. And we are coming for every single one of you." In the council chamber, 47 species listened to this message. Most had never heard a human speak before. They had expected fear, desperation, perhaps a plea for mercy. Instead, they heard a promise. Methdoc's scales had gone pale. "There are still 3,000 of my soldiers on that planet," he said, "against a few hundred surviving humans." Yunara's transparent form flickered with something close to pity. "Yes," she said softly. "There are only 3,000 of your soldiers left. How long do you think that will last?" The answer came over the following days, as groups of humans across the planet began the same patient hunt. They did not fight battles. They did not make stands. They followed. They waited. They learned. And one by one, the HFY patrols stopped reporting in. The hunters had become the hunted. The news reached Earth at the speed of light. Proxima Tertius had been attacked. Thousands were dead. The HFY Dominion had invaded a high-human world. The Galactic Council expected tears. They expected panic. They expected desperate calls for help, or perhaps quiet acceptance of defeat. Humanity was young, small, and weak. They had never faced an enemy like the HFY. Surely they would realize that resistance was pointless. They were very wrong. Within 6 hours of the news breaking, something began to happen across human space. It started small, with individuals making quiet decisions. A factory worker on Mars decided to work a double shift. A retired military officer on Luna dusted off her uniform. A teenager on a mining station asked his parents how he could help. Then it grew. Recruitment centers that normally processed 50 applications per day suddenly had lines stretching around the block. These were not frightened people being forced to serve. These were volunteers. Teachers, farmers, engineers, artists. Old people and young people. People who had never held a weapon in their lives, demanding to be trained. "Why are they doing this?" Counselor Thresh asked, watching the feeds from human worlds with confusion. The HFY have not threatened their core systems. Only one colony was attacked. Logic suggests they should sacrifice that colony to protect themselves. Vethran's ancient eyes were fixed on the displays. "They are not being logical," he said slowly. "They are being human." The feeds showed what he meant. Across every human world, the same phrase was appearing. On signs, on screens, spoken in videos shared millions of times. They are our people. Not our soldiers. Not our territory. Our people. The council began to understand something important. Humans did not see themselves as individuals living on separate worlds. They saw themselves as one pack, one tribe, spread across the stars. And when something hurt part of the pack, the entire pack responded. On Earth, factories that made civilian goods began retooling overnight. Workers who should have gone home stayed at their stations. Within 48 hours, assembly lines that had produced agricultural equipment were producing weapons. Not because anyone ordered them to, because the workers had decided together that this was what needed to happen. Military vessels scattered across human space changed course simultaneously. There was no central order. Fleet commanders simply looked at the situation, looked at their crews, and made the same decision. Every available ship began moving toward Proxima Tertius. This should not be possible, Methdok said, his voice tight with confusion. They have no hive mind. They have no central authority that could coordinate this. How are they acting as one? Yanara had been studying human psychology since the invasion began. She thought she understood. They do not need a hive mind, she explained. They share something else. They call it empathy, but that word does not fully capture it. When one human suffers, other humans feel an echo of that suffering. When one human is threatened, other humans feel the same danger. They are connected by emotion, by shared experience, by stories told across generations. She pulled up a social feed from Earth. Humans were sharing images of the dead on Proxima Tertius. They were sharing names. They were making sure that every single person on Earth knew that real people, people with families and dreams and favorite foods, had been killed. They are making themselves angry, Yanara realized. Deliberately. They are using their own grief as fuel. And there was something else in those feeds that the Council did not understand at all. Humor. Humans were making jokes about the invasion. They were creating absurd images and silly stories about what they would do to the Kethvari. They were laughing. Why do they laugh? Thresh demanded. Their people are dying. This is not funny. Vethran had been researching this as well. It appears to be a survival mechanism, he said. Humans use humor to process fear and pain. By laughing at the thing that threatens them, they reduce its power over their minds. They transform terror into anger, and anger into motivation. One popular image showed a Kethvari soldier next to a human in a cooking apron. The text below read, "First you invade our home. Then you refuse to leave. Now you get treated like the in-laws." Millions of humans had shared this. They found it hilarious. "They are insane," Methdok whispered. "No," Vethran corrected. "They are preparing for war. This is what human preparation looks like." The first human fleet arrived at Proxima Tertius 2 weeks after the invasion began. 200 ships, most of them designed for exploration and trade, now carried every weapon humanity could attach to them. They were not beautiful. They were not elegant. They were the desperate creation of a species that had been pushed too far. The Kethvari blockade fleet moved to intercept. They had 30 heavy warships, each one designed specifically for combat, crewed by soldiers who had trained their entire lives for battle. By any reasonable measure, they should have destroyed the human fleet in minutes. The lead human vessel broadcast a message on all frequencies. The voice belonged to Admiral Chun, a woman who had never commanded a combat fleet before this week. She had been in charge of a research expedition. Now she was here. "This is the United Earthship Defiance to Kethvari forces. You have attacked our people. You have murdered our families. You have burned our homes. We are here to take them back or die trying." There was a pause. Then Admiral Chun continued, and something in her voice changed. It became older somehow, harder. The voice of a species that had crawled out of caves, survived ice ages, and spread across the world despite having nothing but soft skin and stubborn hearts. "We do not care about your superior numbers. We do not care about your superior weapons. We do not care if we lose 100 ships for every one of yours. We will keep coming. We will never stop. We will never surrender. And when this is over, every species in this galaxy will know what happens when you hurt humanity's children." The transmission ended in the council chamber. 47 species watched the human fleet advance. The ships were outmatched in every way. Many would die in the coming battle. The humans knew this. They attacked anyway. Why? Counselor Thresh asked, genuinely confused. Why did they throw away their lives for one small colony? Ynara felt the emotions washing through space from those human ships. Fear, yes. But beneath the fear, something stronger. Love, rage, the absolute certainty that some things were worth dying for. Because, she said softly, they are pack animals. And the pack protects its own, always, no matter the cost. The battle began. Human ships exploded. Human crews died. And the remaining ships pressed forward, harder, faster, learning from every death, adapting to every loss. The pack had found its prey, and nothing in the galaxy was going to stop them. The first battle was a disaster for humanity. The Kethvari, warships cut through the human fleet like claws through soft flesh. Their weapons were more powerful. Their shields were stronger. Their captains had centuries of combat experience. Within the first hour, humanity lost 60 ships. The Galactic Council watched in silence. This was what they expected. The humans had been brave, foolishly brave, but bravery could not overcome such a vast difference in technology and training. The invasion of Proxima Tertius would succeed, and humanity would learn the same lesson that 1,000 species had learned before them. But then something strange happened. Admiral Chun, commanding from her damaged flagship, ordered her remaining ships to retreat. This was sensible. This was what any species would do after such losses. But the humans did not run away. They retreated just far enough to regroup, analyze their data, and think. 3 hours later, they attacked again. What are they doing? Methdoc demanded. They have already lost. Why did they return? The answer became clear within minutes. The human tactics had completely changed. Ships that had charged directly into Kethvari weapons before now moved in unpredictable patterns. Vessels that had spread their fire across multiple targets now concentrated everything on single weak points. Crews that had panicked under fire were now calm, coordinated, and deadly die in 3 hours. The humans had studied their defeat and created an entirely new strategy. The second battle cost humanity 40 more ships. But this time, they destroyed 3 Kethvari warships in return. That is impossible, a Kethvari commander reported to his fleet. We have been fighting wars for 10,000 years. Our tactics are perfected. How did they improve so quickly? The answer was something the Kethvari could not understand. Humans did not see failure as defeat. They saw it as information. Every ship that died sent data back to the fleet before its destruction. Every weapon that failed was analyzed. Every tactic that did not work was studied, understood, and replaced with something better. The human crews called it learning. The Kethvari called it impossible. On the ground, the same pattern emerged. Kethvari soldiers ambushed a group of human fighters, killing half of them in seconds. The survivors retreated. The Kethvari celebrated their victory. The next day, the same ambush tactic failed completely. The humans had anticipated it. They had set their own trap. This time, it was the Kethvari who died. Vethran watched this cycle repeat across the entire war. Humans appeared to have an unusual relationship with trauma, he observed. When other species experience catastrophic losses, they become less effective. Their morale breaks. Their will to fight fades. Humans do the opposite. He pulled up psychological data from human survivors. Soldiers who had watched their friends die showed increased focus, not decreased. Units that had suffered heavy losses fought harder, not softer. The death of their packmates did not break them. It made them more determined. "They are converting grief into fuel," Inara said quietly. "Every loss makes them more dangerous." The third major battle happened 1 week after the first. By now, humanity had lost nearly 60% of their fleet. By any standard measurement used by the Council, this should have triggered withdrawal. No species could sustain such losses and continue fighting. But the humans did not withdraw. The remaining ships attacked with terrifying precision. They had studied HFY shield frequencies and designed weapons to pierce them. They had analyzed HFY movement patterns and predicted where each warship would be. They had learned, adapted, and evolved. This time, they destroyed 8 HFY warships. Admiral Vrex, commanding the HFY blockade, sent a priority message to Methdok in the council chamber. His voice shook in a way that HFY voices were not supposed to shake. "We are killing them," Vrex reported. "Every battle, we kill more of them than they kill of us. But it does not matter. They do not break. Their unit cohesion increases under fire. Their tactical effectiveness improves with every engagement. What species gets more effective when their pack is dying?" Methdok had no answer. The ground war had turned even worse for the HFY. Human resistance groups had gone from hiding to hunting. They used captured HFY weapons. They set traps using HFY tactics. They seemed to absorb everything they learned about their enemy and use it against them. One HFY officer reported capturing a human soldier and attempting to interrogate her. The human had been shot twice and had not eaten in days. She should have been broken. Instead, she laughed. "You still do not understand," she told her captors through bloody teeth. "You are not fighting an army. You are fighting a species. Kill me, and 100 humans will learn from my death. Defeat this fleet, and 10 more will take its place. You cannot win. You can only choose how long you want to lose." The officer executed her. But her words spread through the HFY forces, and something began to change. For the first time in their long history of conquest, HFY soldiers began to feel something they had only ever seen in their prey. That final battle of the blockade came 3 weeks after the invasion began. The human fleet had been reduced to 78 ships. They were damaged, exhausted, running low on ammunition, and hoped they attacked anyway. Admiral Chun led the assault personally. Her flagship, Defiance, had been repaired so many times that barely any original parts remained. Her crew had seen friends die on every shift. They had not slept properly in weeks when a HFY missile crippled the Defiance's engines. Chen made a decision that would haunt the galaxy for centuries. She ordered her remaining crew to evacuate, took manual control of the ship, and aimed directly at the HFY flagship. Her last transmission was perfectly calm. Proxima Tertius sends its regards. The collision destroyed both vessels. Admiral Vrex, the conqueror of 100 worlds, died instantly. The HFY fleet, suddenly leaderless and terrified of an enemy that would rather die than surrender, began to fall apart. The remaining human ships pressed their advantage. They fought with the fury of a species that had nothing left to lose and everything to avenge. By the end of the day, the HFY blockade had been broken. In the council chamber, 47 species watched in stunned silence as human transports began landing on Proxima Tertius. Reinforcements, supplies, and fresh troops poured onto the surface. The surviving colonists, who had been hunted like animals for weeks, now found themselves with an army at their backs. The hunt was about to enter its final phase. Methdok sat in his chair, staring at the displays with empty eyes. His people had conquered 1,000 worlds. They had never lost a war. They had never faced an enemy who simply refused to accept defeat. What do we do? he asked, and his voice was small. Vethran had been alive for 800 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species ascend to greatness and crumble to dust. He had never seen anything like this. "I suggest," the old Silari said carefully, "that you begin considering surrender terms. Because these humans will not stop. Not ever. And I do not think you understand yet what that means." The war ended not with a final battle, but with a quiet surrender. The Kethvari Dominion still had ships. They still had soldiers. Their homeworld remained untouched, protected by fleets that had never tasted defeat. By every measure of military strength, they could have continued fighting for years, but their commanders had seen something that broke them more completely than any weapon could. Human reinforcement fleets were still coming. Every week, more ships arrived at Proxima Tertius. They came from every human world, crewed by volunteers who had left their families, their careers, and their safe lives behind. They came knowing they would probably die. They came anyway. "We cannot win," Admiral Threx reported to the Kethvari High Council. His voice carried the exhaustion of a leader who had finally understood his enemy. "We can kill them for 100 years, and they will still come. Their persistence is not a tactic. It is their nature. They were built for this." The humans had already begun planning the next phase of the war. Intelligence gathered from the ground showed they were designing invasion ships. They were training soldiers for operations in Kethvari territory. They were not content to simply defend their colony. They were preparing to hunt the Kethvari to their home. This was what finally convinced the Dominion to surrender. Not the battles they had lost. Not the ships they had sacrificed. The simple, terrifying realization that humanity would follow them across the galaxy, would pursue them for generations if necessary, would never, ever stop until the hunt was complete. The surrender was signed on Proxima Tertius, in a building that had once been a school. Kethvari diplomats faced human representatives across a simple table. The humans showed no celebration. Their faces were calm, patient, the faces of predators who had finally cornered their prey. Ambassador Helena Vasquez spoke for humanity. She was a small woman, soft-looking by galactic standards, with gray hair and kind eyes. She had lost her son in the initial invasion. She had volunteered for this role specifically. "Your terms are accepted," she told the Kethvari delegation. "Proxima Tertius will be returned to human control. Reparations will be paid to surviving families. And the Dominion will publicly acknowledge that the invasion was an act of unprovoked aggression." The lead Kethvari diplomat, a veteran of 100 successful conquests, nodded slowly. Then he asked a question that had been haunting his people since the war began. "We do not understand," he said. "We have faced many species. We have conquered prey across 1,000 worlds. But none of them fought like you. None of them refused to break. None of them followed us when they should have run." He leaned forward, genuine confusion in his reptilian eyes. "How did you know you would win?" Helena Vasquez smiled. It was a warm smile, the kind you might see on a grandmother offering cookies to a child. But behind her eyes, something old and fierce was watching. "We did not know we would win," she said simply. "But we knew we would not stop. And eventually, you would." The council chamber was silent as the surrender ceremony concluded. 47 species had watched humanity's first war in real time, from the initial invasion to the final peace. They had seen soft, fragile creatures transform into something that made even the Kethvari afraid. Vethran rose to address the assembly. The old Solari had spent the past months studying everything the council had recorded about humanity. He had revised his reports many times. Now, finally, he was ready to present his conclusions. "We must reclassify species 7291, he announced. The designation Class 7 developing species is no longer appropriate. Then what are they? Counselor Thresh asked. Vethran was silent for a long moment. He had watched 10,000 species across his long life. He had categories for all of them. Predators and prey, conquerors and conquered, builders and destroyers. Humans fit none of these categories. They were something new. I am creating a new classification, he finally said. Apex persistence predator, civilizational scale. This designation indicates a species that hunts not as individuals, but as an entire civilization. A species whose pursuit instinct operates across interstellar distances and generational timescales. A species that, once engaged, will continue hunting until victory or extinction. The chamber was very quiet. Recommendations for interaction with such species are as follows. Vethran continued. Do not threaten them. Do not harm their people. Do not attack their worlds. If conflict occurs despite these precautions, immediate surrender is advised. Extended warfare against an apex persistence predator is not survivable. Methdok listened to these words with a face that showed nothing. His people's empire had been humbled. Their reputation as the galaxy's greatest warriors had been destroyed by farmers and teachers with makeshift weapons. He would carry this shame for the rest of his long life. And yet, looking at the human ambassador on the display, he felt something besides shame. Something that might, in time, become respect. They are remarkable creatures, he admitted quietly. We should have studied them more carefully before we invaded. Yes, Vethran agreed. You should have. 1 year later, a new species approached the Galactic Council requesting first contact. They called themselves the Rex Imperium, and they were confident in their military power. Their representatives arrived at the Grand Observatory with talk of expansion and conquest. We have heard of the species called humans, their ambassador announced. We are not impressed. They seem soft, fragile. Our warriors would crush them easily. Vethran looked at Yanara. Yanara looked at Methdok. 46 species exchanged glances but carried the weight of shared memory. Perhaps, Vethran suggested, you would like to review some recordings before you make any decisions about humanity. The Derek's ambassador shrugged. If you insist. But I cannot imagine soft creatures being any real threat. The recordings began. The ambassador watched the initial invasion, nodding approvingly at Kethvari tactics. Then he watched the human response. The persistence hunting. The pack coordination. The relentless adaptation. The final battle, where a human admiral drove her ship into the enemy flagship rather than accept defeat. By the end, the Derek's ambassador had grown very quiet. These creatures, he said slowly, are they truly as they appear? Soft bodies? No natural weapons? No armor? Yes, Vethran confirmed. They are exactly as they appear. And they fight like this? They do. The ambassador was silent for a long time. Then he straightened, adjusting his ceremonial armor with hands that trembled slightly. The Derek's Imperium has no interest in conflict with humanity, he announced. We will seek peaceful relations, trade agreements, cultural exchange. There will be no invasion. A wise decision, Methdok said. The Kethvari representative's voice carried the weight of hard-earned knowledge. I suggest you remember it. The ambassador left quickly, already composing messages to his government. The recommended policy change would go through without debate. Some species, his report would say, were not worth conquering. When he was gone, the council members settled back into their seats. Another crisis avoided. Another species warned away from humanity's path. Yanara drifted to a window that looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans were building new ships, establishing new colonies, spreading further into the galaxy. They did not know that an entire civilization had just decided to fear them. They would probably laugh if they found out. That was the strangest thing about humans, she thought. They did not see themselves as frightening. They saw themselves as survivors, as adapters, as creatures who had learned to turn weakness into strength and fear into fuel. They had no claws, no venom, no armor. They had only each other, and the ancient instinct that said, never stop, never give up. Never let the pack fall in the grand scale of the universe. They were small, fragile, soft, and the entire galaxy was learning to be very, very careful around them.